site. Set up your door while you're here. Since you're in a public lab, I would say no, I don't want to stay signed in. And then from here, you will want to go to Documents, of course. And there's a folder there called Conference. We're in a conference. And then we've got one, Beth's got one for her class, and I've got one for this course. The Excel examples is what we're going to use. And we don't really want to use the online version, so put a check mark beside this one and tell it you want to open it in the app.
Can you hold on a second? I'm still thinking.
Sorry.
Yeah, me too. I'm so sorry.
So from documents and conference.
Here, I did it for Google Conference. I think
You sign in. You want to try this?
Will it work on this iPad? On the version it should.
Yeah, I'm not going to say one way or the other.
Slash CSC 112.
So again, did everybody get into the site? Once you get into the site, you go over to Documents. That's interesting. No www on that website, by the way. Log in. Always like to. We want to open that in the app, right?
What's the name of the website?
Oh, we got coffee in there. You gotta remember, our computer didn't work, so. Hey, I couldn't find the power button to say.
I guess you clicked on the copy.
We got this one right here will work. This one's going to look like.
Yes.
No internet, never mind.
We did.
Have you ever seen Jurassic Park? He
Yeah.
says the whole time he's saying we swear no spins. It's kind of the same thing. Same thing here, right?
So what's the name of this? Let's go back one second. What's the name of mine?
This is where we're supposed to put this. Now go to here, press that square button. There's Documents. And that's where I'm at. He clicked on something after this, but oh yeah, that's probably it.
Everybody over here rocking and rolling? That's what I'm talking about. My.
It's a long time old. But I matched that, I thought I did. Well, no, I didn't. Okay.
He just
Yeah. It doesn't like him. So inside the folder that says Conference, you're going to click on the check mark beside that one so that you want to open it in the app. Everybody's good. Make sure. No. Yeah. You pay attention. All right, Robbie, how we doing? Moving right along. All right, everybody listening in. How are you doing?
They didn't have much on me. I started in the third. We'll have a
Excel. Using Excel.
All right. So hopefully, we've gotten to this site, to this page, and you told it who you were, you signed in, and you went to Documents, and from the conference folder that's inside of Documents, there is the Excel examples. That's already out there. So like I said, you're gonna wanna put a check mark beside that and tell it that I want to open that in the app. And when you open it in the app, make sure that you hit the button right here that says, obviously it's opened in read only, you want to click on that button right there that says I want to do some editing on this workbook. And just tell it, you're just going to view a read only copy. Let's see. Yeah, let's just do a read only.
Is it supposed to make you push again?
Okay.
Got it. Okay.
Yes.
Maybe so.
Open it now. Here, go back to the checked it first half. Go back, go to that circle right there.
Put a check mark on the file and go to open as in the app. All right, does everybody have your file open? And it's probably going to ask you to save it as well. So on these computers, feel free to save it anywhere you want to. So in the downloads or the documents or whatever, right? Because this computer, when you shut it down, is going to delete it anyway. So,
Can you tell us how to get in with the app one more time?
so get in with the app. Just put a check mark beside it. Mm-hmm. Not both of them, just one of them.
Just one of them?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there you go.
Open
Got it.
in the app.
Thank you.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. So you may, let me go ahead, first let me go ahead and tell you, basically, when I was volunteered for this, I obviously, I don't know any of your expertise. I don't know what you do for a living, or your job, I guess. I don't know exactly what you do, and how well versed you are with Excel. So, you may be super tech savvy and way up here, and this be a total snooze for you. Or you may be way down here and glazed over the whole time. But I'm aiming for that middle ground because I didn't know where to go, right? So, again, my name is Mark Gilliland. Some of you may know me as the new Tom Hill. So I do teach the computer applications class. Thank you, Rob. So, again, my goal with this was to introduce you to some items that may or may not be familiar to you. I used them in my previous life in corporate office environments. Again, I don't really know your level of expertise, so some of you may kind of be bored with this, and some of you may be totally lost, but I'm just going to try to point out a few things as best I can that maybe some of you take away at least some efficiency, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is actually something that you may, I look at this as maybe you could use this personally or you could use this in your job, either way. But I have put together something here. This is basically like, say I wanted to buy a house. And let me zoom in to make it, maybe, how's that? So maybe you wanted to buy a house and you know how much, or maybe you don't know how much you want to spend. And you know what your interest rate is going to be, and you know it's going to be 360 months, which is 30 years, right? And it's going to calculate your monthly payment for you. So the first thing I'm going to do, this has already done this for me. And I realized based on that calculation that it calculated for me, and we'll get to some of that stuff a little bit later. Based on that, it calculated the monthly payment for me because I used a function called payment to calculate that. So I'm looking at that and I'm thinking, I cannot afford that much a month. So I need to do a recalculation. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to copy and paste this information. So if I click anywhere inside my little grid of data there and I hit Control A, it selects all of my data, right? So I may move a little fast, or some of you may not think I move fast at all, I don't know. I'm going to copy and paste that information in right here, just so I can redo some work with that, right? So again, Control A selects all of your information. That's a keyboard shortcut for selecting all. You could also click and drag and select what you wanted, right? And then paste it any way you like, however you like to paste stuff. But we're gonna copy and paste that in there so that you've got a new platform to work with right here. And what I want to do at this point is I want to look at this data and I want it to calculate for me how much can I afford based on how much I know what my monthly payment is, right? So the way we're going to do that is we're going to use something that we actually do in this class that I teach. It's something called goal seek. So we're going to do some data analysis, right? Which kind of the whole point of, we don't just collect data for giggles, right? We like to use it to do something. Either we're trying to tell a story with data, or we're trying to make a decision or something like that, right? That's the whole point of collecting data and using data. So when we're doing something with this data, we need to go to the tab. Obviously, we need to go to the tab that says data, and there is a what if analysis right here. Does everyone see that? Sorry, I can't zoom in on that portion of it, but I can zoom in on the grid here, but not that the ribbon. So when you click on what if analysis, I've got a couple options there. The one we're going to use today is called goal seek, the one right in the middle. And it pops up this little window that says goal seek. So again, I haven't selected any data. I just went to the data tab on the ribbon and I selected what if analysis and I selected goal seek. So you should have this little box right here open that says goal seek. And I'm ready to make some changes. What's his name? Yeah, he's in the online version. Yeah. So we talked about, so we said to, from conference, oh, everybody's saving a copy. So from this, we said to select it and open it in the app, right? Do you see what I'm doing right here? We opened it in the app. So what is goal seek? Has anybody in here ever used goal seek before? That doesn't make any difference than me. I never used it before either before I taught this class. But it's actually kind of a neat tool. So I've got this that's automatically calculating, and if you were to go to google.com, if you were to go Google simple mortgage calculator, it would do the exact same thing. For 400,000, 30 year at 3.0, it would tell you right there, simple mortgage calculator, it would tell you what your payment is. It's doing the same thing that this is doing right here, which is calculating that loan amount over a certain amount of time, or so many months, at a certain percentage rate, right? So from the data and the what if analysis, let's go back to goal seek, and I'm trying to change that. I want to know, I know I can only afford $1,000 a month, for example. That's what we're going to use that nice round number. I can afford $1,686.42, and that's just the house. That's not interest. That's not taxes and insurance. That's just the house note right there, right? So I want to change that based on what I know I can afford, and we're going to use that nice round number of $1,000. So in other words, I want to set that cell, and that cell is column B12, right? So I want to change B12. So I'm going to type in B12, or I could have clicked on it. I'm going to set it to $1,000 because that's what I just said I could afford is $1,000. And I'm going to do that by changing my total loan amount, which is B9. So when you click on OK, it's going to do a little work for you, and it's going to actually change those numbers, which is kind of slick. So does everybody see what I've done to this point before I hit click on OK? I'm saying I want to set a certain cell to a certain value by updating or changing one of those values. Right? So when I click on OK, it'll do a little bit of work, and looky there. Now, it changed that information, and sure enough, my monthly payment is now $1,000, and these two items remain the same, but it changed what I could actually get a loan amount for, right? So that's kind of slick. It did the work for you. You could have went to Google and sat here and I'm like, okay, how much can I afford? Keep changing that until it gets to where you want it to be, or you could do it just like that. So that is the goal seek function. That is, again, something I personally have never used before I taught this class, but it is kind of neat. And that's just one example of what it can do. It's basically updating one value based on some items you told it to change. You told it to change this value based on the fact that you knew what that one needed to be, right? So that one maybe, I don't know, maybe you might use that one more personally than anything really, right? Any questions on goal seek before we move on to the next one that I feel like maybe will really be helpful for you? Because a lot of people probably don't use some of the things to the extent that we need to. All right, so no questions on that. We'll move on to a simple if statement. All right, so I've got, again, a grid created here with some information. And if you'll notice, it's got some data. And these are very simple examples, right? Typically, when you have something you've downloaded, like if you were over in administration and you downloaded something from a data warehouse, if we have one, I don't know if we did, but if you downloaded some data from a data warehouse, you probably won't have just 4 lines of data or 3 lines of data with a title row, right? You'll probably have 30,000 rows of data or something, right? So this is just an easy example to show you kind of what's going on. So I've got, here's my values. 30, 29, and 28, again, very simple, right? And right here, in this row, I'm asking, is the value 30? And I've got an if statement here that's checking that. And this one returned the value and said, yes, the value there is 30. And this one it said, no, it's not, this is 29, and this one's 28. Well, how did it know that? So, we're gonna do that now in this yellow section. We're gonna learn how we did that. So click in that first yellow box in B10, and we're gonna do a simple if statement. So you can get to a formula, or a function rather, by going to either this button right here, or you can go to the formulas tab and say, I want to insert a function from here, right? Either way, you need to open this window right here, by either clicking on that button or this button. And now that you've done that, if you'll type in that 2-letter word if and spell it correctly, and click on the go button, that's the very first one that will pull up, is the if. So basically, this is like a little search right here of all the functions that are available to you. And when you click let go, that's basically your search, right? And if you spelled it correctly, I hope you did, then the first one it brings back is the one you're looking for, right? So if you click on OK, it's going to open up your dialog box for an if function, right? And the first thing it wants to know is, what are you looking for? So the first thing I'm looking for, since this is, like I say, a very simple example, I'm asking, is this value that I'm referring to right here on the same row, is it 30? So, is that field that I'm in, which is B10, I'm in B10, right? Is B10 equal to 30? If it is, if that's true, and when I click off of that, it's already telling me that it's, thank you. A10 is it equal to 30? It's true. It's already telling me there as I'm working through it that it is true, which means it's going to fall into this true condition, not the false condition, but we got to put both of them in. If it's true, I want to put exactly what I did up there. I'm going to say yes, this value is 30. And if not, I'm going to say, I'm just going to say no, it's not. That's how I'm going to start. So again, a very simple, basic example of what we're doing here. I'm checking to see the value in another field. That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. I'm checking the value in another field. So when I click on OK, it's going to do that for me. And it says, yes, this value is 30. Because it checked in A10 like I told it to see if it was 30, and it was equal to 30. Does everybody know what the field handle is in Excel? The field handle? The field handle is, if I zoom in a whole lot. Does everybody see that bottom right corner is a little bit different? And when I mouse over it, my cursor turns into like a crosshair. You can click and drag formulas using that, right? So, again, a very simple example with only 3 rows. When I Control Z and go back, what if I didn't have 3 rows? What if I had 30,000 rows? I would not want to click that fill handle and drag it down for 30 rows and get down to 28,000 in the phone ring or something. So in case you did not know this, and hopefully maybe some of you do,
Which crosshair do you drag to copy the formula? Because mine is just copying, yes, this value is 30 to each.
Okay, so if you're, see how my crosshair right here still kind of looks, for lack of a better word, it's larger.
It's white, yeah.
Yeah, that is not a crosshair, that's a selection. So in other words, I can select this cell. If you click and drag it like that, it's just gonna copy the value that's in there, or try to. It needs to change to that very small, skinny crosshair you said. I've moused over directly in the corner. Let me see if I can zoom in a little more.
I did that, it still just says, yes, this value is 30.
See right there, see how that changed?
Mm-hmm.
So, like I was saying, the other thing is, thank you, Ben. Like I was saying, you would not want to do that for 30,000 records. What you can do is double click on that and look what happens. It does it for you. And it did that on 3 records, and guess what? It'll do the same thing on 30,000 records or 100,000 records. If you just double click on that, it'll do it for you, which is super handy and super efficient, right? Because why in the world would you click and drag that for so many records, right? So, here's the thing though. All we've done at this point is check to see if it's 30. Right? What if I needed an if condition that checked for more than one thing? Because that is all, when I go to insert a function, that's all it asked me was one condition, right? I'm checking one logical check, and what am I doing if it's true, and what am I doing if it's false? You can change your false condition to another if statement. Some of you may know that, some of you may not. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know your level of expertise. So, for example, when I click on here, it shows my function now. I double click on it, it shows my function, right? So that first piece right there is my logical check. My second piece is what if that logical check was true. And the second piece is what if my logical check was false. So in other words, that second one that says no, I'm going to backspace and remove it and add a new if statement, right? But again, what's the, right there, it tells me what is the syntax for an if statement. The first thing is my logical check. So I've got to say is A10 equal to 29 this time. And if so, value is 29. And if false, we'll just do no again. So I changed that one. So now I need to use my fill handle again, right? So it'll apply that to everything. So again, maybe this is kind of advanced, maybe not, I don't know. Again, I don't know your level of expertise. But that would be how you would do multiple checks in an if statement. You just constantly replace the false condition. Pull that back up.
How many ifs can you string along? Because once upon a time it was only 7. Eight was there, but
That's a good word. That's what I remember is 7. I know now they've got this that used not. You see the little arrow right here? You see where I'm at? That little arrow. You can, that used not to be there, but you can click on that so that you can see a lot
yeah,
of
I
it.
got the formula bar up.
So that you can, yeah, and it shows a lot more now. So I'm not sure what it is. We can probably Google it.
John, what did you say? John uses this a lot.
Use
I
it
think
30
it's
now?
more than 7, I don't know.
I don't know. Yeah. But I've used this quite a bit. You just, all you have to do basically is you keep replacing that no condition with another if statement basically. And that's how you do, basically, if you were a programmer, you may, that would
Oh,
be it.
nested if statements, right?
Exactly. So, I know some of these are kind of basic, you know, the actual data that I've got here, maybe the work that we're doing is not basic, but the example that I'm using there is kind of basic. But basically that's all I'm trying to show you there is that you can do an if check or an if condition to check multiple things, right? So let's move on to, how much time we got? Okay, just very good. So, in case you haven't noticed yet, the big black area there that I've utilized to separate what I've already created versus what we're gonna do on the different one, right? And the yellow is the one we're gonna fill in. So, basically you work in accounting, and if you're on at the bottom here, if you'll click on the next tab that says, this one right here, if and absolute reference, that's the one we're on now. So basically this is a very simple accounts receivable file. I've got a couple of customers there. I've got how much, I've got an invoice number and how much the invoice is for. I've got, from the time I create the invoice, or send the invoice, whatever, I've got 30 days to when it's due. And then, based on, I've got right up here a field that's calculating today's date. And then I've got a field right here that's calculating that date minus this date, show me how old the invoice is and whether or not it's overdue, right? So, how did we get to that point of all this being here? So we formatted this as a dollar amount, and we'll do that in just a second. We did a calculation here to get all this, and a calculation here to get that with a static reference, and then we did a conditional formatting right here to make that show up. So let's do that now. So let's scroll down to the one that's got everything highlighted in yellow that we need to fill out. So the first thing is the current date. A lot of you may know this already, but you can do, there's two different ones you can do. You can do now, or you can do today. So if I type in the equal sign, that's how you manually put in a, manually put in a function. You can put an equal sign and type in the word today with open and close parentheses. And when you hit enter, it will go down to the system date and read that and say that today is indeed 1/4. That just looks funny to me. 1/4/2022. Sure enough, it is. So I manually typed that in using the equal key. You could have also done that just the same way we inserted a function just a minute ago by clicking on that button right there or that button right there from the formulas tab, right? And type in the one you wanted today, and it will indeed find it. When you do it that way, it gives you that message right there that says this is volatile, which means when you open this file tomorrow, it will not say 1/4, it will say 1/5, because obviously it's reading the system date, right? So that is a valid statement, so don't be confused by that, I'll tell you that. So, now, let's look at probably one of the easier things we'll do real quick, is let's format this to make sure that anybody looks at it knows that's not a number, knows that's a dollar amount. We'll do that from the Home tab. It's currently set right here in the middle. It's currently set to a general format, and we're going to change it to an accounting format. So that anybody that looks at that knows clearly that that is a dollar amount. So that is, in case you didn't know, from our Home tab, how you can format the data that's in your grid in Excel. Lots of different options there, right? So now let's do a quick calculation. What is my invoice due date? My invoice due date, it says right there in the title, that's my title, right? Title of all my data. The invoice due date is 30 days past when the invoice date and when the invoice actually was created, I guess. So it's basically right there, column B. So column B is, so that is B22. So basically that's what I want to do, is I want to type in the equal sign, which is how you start a calculation in Excel, right? So you would put an equal sign and you would say B22 plus 30. And Excel is intuitive enough to know that that 30, it just adds 30 to just the day. That's pretty neat, right? I mean, how did it know how to do that? It didn't add it, it didn't change the year, 30 years, it changed the day. That's pretty slick, I think. So, if you type an equal sign right there in that grid here, in that cell, you type an equal sign, and that cell B22 plus 30, it knows you're wanting to add 30 days to that, right? So, just like we did a minute ago, we'll double click on the fill handle, right? And look at there, that's pretty simple. And again, just like I said, that was only a few rows. For efficiency's sake, you could click and drag that to fill that, but double clicking that fill handle, if you've got 30,000 as opposed to just 3 or 4 line items or records, double clicking that fill handle is a lot more efficient, right? So, so now we've calculated our actual, so my invoice was created on 11/22 and it's due on 12/22, right? So now I want to know the age of that. So this comes to, so let's talk about the fill handle for a second. The fill handle is intuitive enough to know that when I grab that fill handle and I drag it down 4 or 5 rows, it knows that I did that. And it knows in my calculation that's inside that to change that B, when I go down 1 row, it knows, it knows that 22, it knows to change that to a 23. And a 24, 25, or however far down I go, right? Same thing if I use that fill handle to go left or right. It knows to change the column, it would change that B to a C, right? If I use that fill handle. Well, what happens if I don't want it to do that? Bill Gates is pretty sharp. Sometimes he gets it right, sometimes he doesn't. So we want to reference today's date, and we always want to reference that date. So we'll do that using what's called a static reference, and a static reference is, well, we'll do that using the $sign, so don't confuse that with the formatting. But a static reference says, even when I use that fill handle, I don't want it to move out of that cell. And what is a cell in Excel? A cell is where a row and a column meet, right? So in other words, this is column B, columns like columns on your front porch, right? So this is column B and row 19, and where they intersect is B19. So the data that's in B19, right? So what is the age? I want to subtract today's date. I want to subtract that from it. So I type in an equal sign, and I say B19 minus F22. 55. So it's saying that, is that right? That's right. There's 55 days between today's date and when that invoice was due. So yes, that is overdue. But look what happens when I use that fill handle. Look at all these crazy, and why is that? Because I didn't tell it. I used the fill handle, which means it's going to go from B19 on this next one. Since I used that fill handle and went down 1 row, it's going to make this one go down 1 row as well. And guess what? There's nothing there in B20, right? So that's what that one's referencing, is B20. So let's undo that. Control Z, right? So let's change it. And a static reference is, like we said, the $sign. So in front, and we said a cell is where a row meets a column, right? So I can't just freeze one of them, I gotta freeze them both. So I put a $sign in front of the B, which is the column, and a $sign in front of the 19, which is the row. And now when I use my fill handle, it works. Because if you click on every one of these, it's still going to B19. Basically, it froze that B19 because you wanted it to. You're always, no matter which record you're on, you're always referencing today's date, the current date, which is the data in cell B19. Otherwise, if you hadn't put those $signs on there, as you use the fill handle, it would update that to B20, B21, B22. It would be constantly changing that, right? So that's called a static reference. And that can be very handy if you need that, especially when using that fill handle. So one last thing on this one before we move on is, how can I find out, now that I've done that, I've calculated based on my invoice date, and I know, this is my business, I know that when I invoice somebody, I'm giving them 30 days to pay it, so I know that, so based on that, I've calculated my due date. I also know, based on the system, that what the age of that invoice is then, basically, how many days past that invoice date it is. Now I need to calculate, is it overdue? So basically, if it's 30 days or greater, well, we'll just say greater than 30 days, it's overdue. So, let's do that first. Let's put an if statement in there. We just did that, right? We did an if statement. So, we'll click in this cell and we'll click on from formulas, we'll insert a function again. We're going to do the if function again, which it should already be there. It should be one you already used, right? If not, you can type it in, if. So we want to say is the value in G22, right? Is the value in that cell where a column meets a row, is the value right, that 55, is that 55 greater than 30? And I can clearly see that it is. So is G22 greater than 30? And it's already telling me, yes, it's true. If it is, I want you to return the value that says overdue. If not, I don't need to see anything, so I can just leave that blank. So I click on OK, and it tells me, sure enough, that is greater than 30, so it tells me that it is overdue. You know what I did? I needed, when I left it blank, it just excluded that from the formula. So if I want to literally leave it blank, a text blank, I need to put a blank in there, which is 2 quotation marks, right? So now it's going to go through there and check them all when you use that fill handle. Once you get your if statement correct on the first one, and then use your fill handle, it will go down through there and check every one of them. And again, this is a very simple example because I've only got 4 or 5 records, right? What if you had 30,000, 50,000 records? You know, what if you were FedEx and you shipped? I'm a company and I shipped, 30 packages a day, 30 or 40 or 50 packages a day with you because I'm an online business. I'm shipping cupcakes to China, whatever. However many you ship a day, by the time the end of the month rolls around, your invoice is not going to be just 4 or 5 line items. It's going to be, you're going to have several thousand line items, right? So that's why it's so important to know how to do that. Do all your work in the first one and then use the fill handle to do the rest of it, right? Very quickly, let's do, I really wanted to get to VLOOKUP, but it doesn't look like we're going to get to because it is 9:10 already. So let's go ahead and do conditional formatting. So conditional formatting is pretty neat because it will automatically do stuff for you, right? That's the whole point of automating something, right? You want to kind of make your life a little bit easier. So let's select the area we want to do conditional formatting on, right? So click and drag and select that area right there. We're going to do some conditional formatting. And right from the home tab, right smack in the middle right there, it says conditional formatting. So let's click on that, and I want to highlight the cells that are equal, that say overdue, right? So I'm going to highlight cells, the very first one. Highlight cells that are equal to, so I'll select the one that says equal to. And so I typed in the word overdue because I just told it in my if statement to type that word in, overdue. And if it is overdue, I'm going to click on this, what do I want to do with it? I'm going to hit that drop down arrow and go down to custom format. And I want to change my field to a dark red. Red? I'm colorblind, I can't tell. One of those, either one, whichever one of those you want to do, right? But when you click on OK, and OK one more time, it will outline the ones in red that are overdue. So you got somebody sitting up front that's all they do is call, that's part of their job, and the last hour of their day is to open this file up and start calling customers that are overdue. And so it's very easy for them then to be able to locate those customers. So we very quickly ran out of time, and I didn't get to the last part, but hopefully, again, I'm sorry it took longer to open this file up than anticipated. And like I said, I had no idea if the folks sitting in here were going to be Excel experts and this was going to be a snooze, or if this was your first exposure to it. I had no idea, so I was kind of aiming for that middle ground based on some things that I had used that were very helpful to me. So hopefully maybe you caught something that will make your lives easier or helpful.